Thank you all for coming. This is Apocalypse Librarianship. How do you run a library when the world is ending?
Apocalypse how?
Yes, yes, very much so. So what am I talking about when I'm talking about the apocalypse? Am I talking about the like a fire in the library? Am I talking about the basement of a library being flooded in some way? No, I'm talking about total societal collapse. I should say all of these photographs are from the LARP that this has come from, and none of the guns are real. So I'm talking total societal collapse. I'm talking zombies. I'm talking cultists. I'm talking fallen angels. I'm talking whatever the hell this was, and I still don't know.
Rebirth.
Okay, so what I'm talking about, as I said, I participate in a live action role-playing game, or LARP, or sometimes live role-play game, or LRP. For those that don't know, this is kind of like a murder mystery weekend, but instead of trying to solve a murder, you're trying to survive in an apocalypse. You have people running the game, you have people playing characters from outside of the group who come in and provide threats. In this one, I am retreating frantically from an angel with a big sword. And then we're trying to survive in a world that is going through an apocalypse. In the game I'm talking about, which is Forsaken, it is specifically a religious apocalypse. It is not a specific religion's apocalypse. It is a combination of many religious apocalypses. It's chaos and it's terrifying and it's great. So in all of this, facing all of that, I decided to play a librarian. And why is that important? Why did I do this? I like this quote for it. If you're writing any book about the end of the world, what you're really writing about is what's worth saving in it. And I think libraries come under that. I think what we do matters. And I think that in an extreme situation, like an apocalypse, it really highlights the value of what we do. So it's sort of an exercise in that. Also, I thought it would be funny. And it also has been that. But it's turned out to be kind of a profound thing, actually. So, get into that. What is a library? Right. Okay. Yes, you've preempted this one. You know where I'm going with this. Okay. So this is a little free library. It is a bookcase that somebody has put up in a telephone box. There are a large number of librarians that would tell you that that is not a library. That is a shelf with some books on it. So what would turn that into a library? Well, maybe it would be if there was a librarian managing that collection. That could turn it into a managed collection. Is a librarian on their own? Not a library. That there, that's my collection of books. That's not a library, those are just books I own. They're not a managed collection in that way. I just own those books. That, not a library. That is a load of books that are unmanaged. This down here, this, for those that do not know, is the promised land. This is the new library that we have been promised, and one day we shall move there and it will be milk and honey for everyone.
The utopia as opposed to the dystopia.
Precisely.
There would be a silver card reader over the road in physics.
Yeah, in the promised land.
Excellent. I'm not entirely sure why that's important right now, but yes. Very important. We might even have our own. Nevertheless, that is a building. That is not a library until it is a library. Until there, it is a pile of books, and right now, it's mostly a figment of the imagination. So, what am I saying when I say that I run a library in the apocalypse? Right. I think that a good example of a library is a good definition of a library is it's an organised collection of knowledge that serves the need of a community. Not necessarily the needs of everyone in every community, but you have a community and you serve that community. I probably picked this up from some sort of library literature once, but I cannot remember where, and so I cannot cite it, and I'm very sorry. So this is my community here. We have recently settled at the town of Last Haven. The population has expanded beyond that 13 that is written on the sign. In the game at this point, the world ended about a year ago. We became somewhat nomadic and brought together this group of people trying to survive and trying to make things better. I cannot tell you how much I love these folks. Obviously, the characters that I know are fictional, but I know these people out of character as well. These guys are great. It's genuinely one of the best games I've been in. And so they've all got needs that I think a library can support. So we start off with thinking about, at the very early stages, what does your community need? What is it that you... Sorry, I meant to change the slide. This is an outdated version of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I meant to use this one. This is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is a good way of determining up the steps what you need to survive. You start at the bottom and you work up to the top. Obviously, the end of the world, you've already lost the Wi-Fi, so things are pretty bad. You're quite right down at the bottom. But next up, food, shelter, warmth, water, the physiological needs. They're probably your first thing to go for. In terms of, and then on to safety, security, stability, freedom from fear. And then you go up belonging, love, self-esteem, self-actualization. I think there's a degree to which libraries can be involved in all of those. But you've got to pick your battles, right? And you can't serve everything at the start. You've got to work out what your community needs and do it. So I started with this and I started down the bottom. So let's have a think about that. So it's 2025. The new library has been finished, but its completion has brought hordes of zombies to attack us. A thing that does not seem as ridiculous as it did some years ago. You can grab a handful of books. What do you get? What do you reckon is in our collection that you should pick up as you're on your way out of this building that is getting overrun by zombies?
I have a feeling it's going to end up being at the STEM end of things. How to build things, how to mend things, how to purify water, how to generate electricity.
Or would you do the exact opposite and go with the Bible, the Quran, anything that is sort of special collections, I suppose? Grab something unique and probably fairly impractical, but precious?
Mm-hmm.
How to survive in nature 101.
Yeah,
Probably
yeah.
the first one I go for.
Medical textbooks.
Excellent, yeah.
I think that there's a line in The War of the Worlds where one of the characters saying, men like you will get back together and you'll teach, not poems and rubbish, science.
Yes. Oh, I love the Jeff Wayne words. Cool. Stuart, Sarika?
It's all right. I'm just
No,
listening
you're
for now.
good?
Yeah, getting the hang of this. Yeah.
I'm thinking all of the dummies guides that we have.
Nice.
Esperanto.
In some of the heavier books,
Yeah, something you can fight with.
some of the corners.
I'm not saying that's never come up. Okay, so here's what I went for. These were the first few grabs that I got. I think I started out with 2 books and then built up from there. Medical textbooks. This was recommended by a doctor in the group, Zollinger's Atlas of Surgical Operations, because you don't have any of the imaging stuff that you would normally need to find out where things are. You need a good map, and this is really good for maps of where things in the body are. The SAS Survival Guide, brilliant. Brilliant for a couple of reasons, one of which it's tiny and contains quite a lot of information. A map, because Google Maps doesn't work anymore and we don't know where we're going. Hunting, fishing, gathering, cooking food in the wild, exactly as you say, that's going to become important. Food for Free, another one, another good foraging guide. It's a very popular guide, and again, Collins' gem books are tiny. And the Knowledge is my favourite. The Knowledge is a book that someone has written specifically for this case, that basically contains a bunch of practical advice for the first few weeks. One of the things it says is get out of the cities because they are going to run out of food and go chaotic fast, and crumbling buildings are not something you want to be near. But it also contains a lot of useful stuff, like how to build a wind turbine out of a car engine, and other useful stuff like that. It's great. It's so good. I've actually bought another one and stuck it in my stash at home.
Saying that, I think we should now start having a book, What to Do Without Electricity, because that's...
Yeah. It's becoming a
It's
concern. Right?
we should have it in a collection now.
There you go.
What do you do when it's blackout? How do you survive power shift?
Absolutely. Like as I say, this started as kind of a gag, and it's increasingly not that funny anymore. But yeah, so that's what I started with. And we made some early lessons. So, number one, the first lesson, and possibly the most important, books are heavy. They're really heavy. So I brought my collection with me today. This is that. This is what I carry around. That is not the whole collection. We operate under a distributed collection model, which means that we loan out more books than we have space to hold. Specifically, we have more books than I can physically carry, because if I'm loaning the books out, other people are carrying them. This is great. Make sure you loan out as many books as you can. Travel with a large group and make everyone carry a book, and also get them to read it. This became very essential quite early on, because I am not a strong person. Lesson 2, we are not the Bodleian. It is not our job to preserve every single piece of written word. It is our job to serve the needs of our community. So yes, save a precious manuscript, as you say, but you've got to bear in mind that that is weight you are taking that isn't saving your current people for another week. So if it's likely that it's in the Bodleian, and you know that the Bodleian hasn't burnt down, or you do not know for a fact that the Bodleian has burnt down, probably leave it. But if you've got a specific use case, I'd say take it. You can always stash books somewhere safe as well. Books preserve fairly well on their own. You give them the right environment, you give them a bit of protection, they'll take care of yourselves. Write down where you stashed it, go and find it later. Write down who has what. You don't have a catalogue, you have to make your own. I have this notepad, which I tried to start cataloguing in, but honestly, I don't know how to do a paper catalogue. I have no idea how catalogues work. No one ever taught me. I've never bothered to learn. And frankly, at some point in this process, it's going to become very important. But yes, what I do have is a list of everyone I just lent books to last time, so I know where they are. And this has become important because people keep going, oh, do you have a book on this? And I go, I did.
Have you got a classification system of any kind?
I don't think that I have enough books to warrant it yet. I think I might need to at some point, but I think I'm not there. And also, again, those are skills I just don't have. I'm not a cataloguing librarian, and I never have been. I genuinely, it's a massive inadequacy within my skill set for this sort of thing. Eventually, that'll become really important. Fortunately, someone's written some books on that. So at some point, I can learn that.
Assuming you can find the book because someone's catalogued it.
Yes. Yes, well, quite, because, and all of those catalogues will be on computers now. So I'm really just going to have to try and, I guess the first thing I would do is go to the early bits of any collection and find the books on librarianship on zeros, so I can find a list of classifications, so I can then find roughly where things are classified within that library. And when we build a new classification system, we're not going to use Dewey, we're going to use something else, because Dewey is incredibly awful in many ways, on which maybe another talk another time, but I'm not really an expert. But Dewey was a scumbag. Ask what people need. So at the start, I was a bit prescriptive. I said, well, we need this, this, and this. What I should have done is gone around and go, what do we not know how to do? Like, what things do we keep running into that are a problem? Once I started doing that, I started getting all sorts of stuff I wasn't expecting. And that was really good. That's where the surgical guide came from. I never would have thought of the surgical guide on my own. I didn't know that book existed. I think that's really good. Involve your community in your collection development. Always important in any library, I think. Show off your collection. This is useless to everyone. This is a bag. The only people that go through other people's bags are the people that own that bag and thieves. That's no good. You've got to get the collection out, and that's what I'm doing there. That's me finding a table. Every time we stop for a couple of days, I find a table, I put out a bunch of books, and I say, hey everyone, library's open, and people come around and look at the books, pick some out for their own use, return ones that they've used. And once I started doing that, this all worked a lot better. When I was walking around before, it was like, I've got this library, is there anything you need? Oh, I've got this book, do you want it? No one's that interested, but you do something like this. And people go, oh, I didn't know you had that. Always show off your collection. And that, I think, is, again, another lesson for all libraries everywhere at all times. Finally, fairly early on, it became apparent that it's not just about the books. There are other services we provide that are useful. For example, archiving services. Many resources in the end of the world are in a terrible state. And sometimes the information in those resources can be incredibly important. As such, we need to make sure things are preserved and recorded. This came to light in a situation in a prison. This is a bit of a case study of what we did. This is a little case study of what the library did in this situation. So, yes, we found what we thought was going to be a secure hiding spot, but it turned out to be literally a gateway to hell.
It's always the way.
It's always the way, right? It's a terrible habit that we have of finding these places. So yes, and we discovered that lost souls were roaming the halls, and we couldn't leave until we had put them to rest. There was documentation on the inmates of the prison spread throughout it. And people were going out on scavenging parties and bringing back sheafs of paper, like huge piles of paper and books and stuff, and presenting it to us. And just basically got dumped in a room, and people go through it, try to work it out. And there was information in this that was needed to resolve the unfinished business for the ghosts. Now, obviously, not every apocalyptic situation involves ghosts, but mine does. So I'm going to treat this with the, with a degree of realism that perhaps it doesn't deserve. But I guess we'll find out. So services provided. Firstly, we read all the information. We made sure that there were a couple of central people, me and a chap called Edwin, read all of the information. And we catalogued it. We made sure we've got a list of every document that came in. We put a little notation in the corner to show that it had been read and who had read it. And then we made a list of all the documentation in the catalogue, so I knew what we had. We then organised that information into files, piles of information for each lost soul that we found. And then we provided an point of need document delivery services to our teams of exorcists. So we had various teams going out there to put these spirits to rest. We brought them we made sure we were there at the point with the file saying, here is what is wrong with this person. Here is what you need to know about them to put them to rest. It was an efficient operation. It was a very stressful time. In the process, we oversaw the freeing of, I think, about 15 lost souls. So not only do libraries save lives, as we've always said, but libraries save souls. That's my message there. I think this was a big success, and this was again another point when people really started to see the value in what we were doing. So lessons learned from that: document preservation kit, vital. I have put together now a kit of important document preservation tools: plastic wallets, cardboard files, hole punch, treasury tags, paper clips, all of that. I genuinely, when all this was going on, someone brought me a little box that had like 5 paper clips in it, and I swear I nearly burst into tears. The other lesson learned is organise your files. When we were laying them all out, we had the floor of a prison cell to do it in, and we had cramped space, and one of them ended up a little bit behind a doorway. And it was only when I was packing up the game that I found that file. Oh no, this guy never got saved. We never helped this one. Yes, ever since that serves as a reminder to work in an incredibly organised and methodical manner, both in the LARP and generally. A couple of case studies now on specific people in the community. So this is Casey. Casey came to me specifically and said, I'm trying to be a bit more of a leader within this group, but I don't really have any experience of leadership. And so I went, okay, no problem, I'll see what I can find on that. And went away and looked for a couple of books on leadership. So I like to provide people with what they asked for, and maybe something they didn't think that they wanted, just in case. So I got him Behind Enemy Lines, which is an autobiography of a soldier, which I thought was a very sort of on-topic thing for what he thought he wanted. And then I got him The Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela as a bit of a side case for that. And if you like that, maybe try this as well, just to get a bit of a balance in there. And he took away, he sort of looked at them and he went, well, that looks more like my... He took them both, but he said, I think I'll read this. Read Behind Enemy Lines. Now, he comes back to me and says, over the next few games, he's sitting there in the game, and every so often you'll glance over and he's reading his book and he's getting people to help him with some of the words, because the character doesn't read very much. But what he then said to me out of character was really interesting, is that the person that plays Casey doesn't read that much himself either, but he's read that book cover to cover. And it was at that point that I realised I wasn't actually pretending to be a librarian anymore. I was just being a librarian to these people, out of character to an extent as well. And that was kind of a profound moment for me. That was sort of a, oh, this isn't just a gag anymore. Again, this is kind of a little bit real. And the thing that really got to me is that we had a big break over lockdown, and we didn't have any games for about 2 years. And then the last game, we did a game a few months ago, and he comes up to me and he hands me Long Walk to Freedom. And it took me a while, but I got through it. Like, really? Oh my God! How did you feel about that? Like, it was a difficult read, but it was really good. Like, oh, dead chuffed with it. Like, both in character and out of character. I'm really pleased with that. Yeah, no, he's one of my favourite library patrons is Casey.
Arguably, that's one of the books that you wouldn't necessarily grab in your first grab of books from.
It's further up
when they break through.
hierarchy, isn't it?
Exactly, yes. Right now we're up at the sort of a bit more towards the self-actualization side of things, honestly, right up at the top. But yeah, I'm quite pleased with that. That's genuine.
Can I ask you a question? If, as a librarian, you really practice librarianship during your LARPs, is that true of the dentist and the surgeon as well?
So no, but I know what you're getting at, and no, but yes, in that I do know some people that play doctors in this game and other games who have either a medical background or like a St John's Ambulance first aider sort of background or something,
Right.
that play the medics and therefore do it quite realistically.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fantastic because, you know, when you have been stabbed or shot or whatever, you go and lie down, you get an amazing scene played out around you of people frantically trying to save your life, and it's incredible when they do.
I guess that is part of their training. Yeah, they do simulate emergencies. Yeah?
So genuinely, one of the people who plays in this game runs training camps for people that are going to be going and working for NGOs in dangerous countries, and gets a bunch of LARPers in to play refugees and soldiers, and basically get these NGO people in and put them through the ringer, so they have a, here's what this could look like if you are stopped by an armed patrol. Let's have thought about how we're going to react to stuff. And I've never been, but some of my friends have, and it's apparently quite a lot of fun, but also quite scary for them. I think useful. So next case study. This is Trish. So I picked up some poetry books. I picked up one poetry book, I should say, really, and food fiction. I decided to pick up a little bit of non-academic text, sort of, just a bit of fiction, a bit of poetry, that sort of thing, just to see if there was a market for it. And Trish immediately beelined in on Loop of Jade, which is a book of poems. And like, that's great. Okay, brilliant. That book's found its user. They then came back to me a sort of session later. Can we write in the books? I'm like, Well, I quite like marginalia personally. I think it's interesting. I think if you're not defacing the book, if you're not making the book harder to read, you're, if anything, adding value to the book. So I went, yeah, okay, Trish, sure, write in the books. I'm very interested to see where this goes. And from a LARP point of view, it's fantastic because you get a prop and then the prop just becomes more interesting. And so Trish has started writing her own poetry in the blank pages in the book, in any bits, blank spaces. A little bit of poetry went into there. And that's fantastic. That is transformative to that work now. And like, we could get her a notebook and she could do that, but she found her space, and it prompted a lot of interesting stuff. And I just really like that. I just think that really, we're not only supporting a community now, we're supporting a community in making new books, new information resources, new knowledge, new fiction. And that, I think, showed that we were getting to a much more stable place now. So I'm very pleased with that as well. So we've got some future plans. first off, succession planning. Kirsty has a slide in her research support presentation about data, about what if you were hit by a bus tomorrow. And if I was eaten by a zombie tomorrow, I don't know who would run the library. I like to think that someone in the community would pick up that bag, figure it out, get on with the job. But I think it would be much, much better if I had a plan for the library's survival. I think you've got a plan for these emergencies. And just like we've got a library planning team for chaos here, I think we have to have a bit of a planning session for what's coming with the library, because frankly, it's a miracle that I'm still alive. Permanent location. Oh God, please, a permanent location. It is so heavy and I am so tired. And there are things that you can't do when you're carrying a collection along. There are, you have to make sacrifices with your collection. And I think a permanent location would be good. We think that New Haven might be that place. We will see how that goes. On a related note, diplomacy. The library can be an outreach tool. I think the library can be a way of bridging between our community and other survivor communities that are out there, and hopefully get them to set up some of their own libraries, and then we can have a network, and then again, it's much harder for this whole thing to fall down. An education program. If we're in one place, maybe we can sit down and actually teach out some of the skills we've got. I think the library could be a sort of teaching centre as well. We've got people in the group that know all sorts of stuff and could run training sessions for people. I think that'd be value. Do we need a children's section? Right now, not many children in that community, largely because it's a LARP and no one under 16 is allowed to play. But it's not that there's none exactly within the community in the fiction. So at some point, we probably need to start teaching them again, as opposed to running away from things with them. And the library should be involved in that probably. And finally, quite importantly, I think we need to weed the collection. A lot of stuff gets brought to me. I take a lot of it. I am selective. When people brought me a book on robotics, I said, I don't think that's going to be relevant. When people brought me a copy of 50 Shades of Grey in Swedish, I said, I don't think I need that. But yeah, we've got some stuff in there and it's not getting used. So with that in mind, I need some help. I reckon at least 10 books need to come out of that bag. That bag is currently everything that is not currently on loan. And I'd like some input. So those of you that can, and perhaps we can get Stuart on someone's laptop if someone can get into the call. Have a go at the collection, see what we've got in there, see what you think would be best to cut.
Okay.
We have 20 minutes and I'll take questions at the end, so maybe 10 to 15 minutes.
Yes.
Do we have to justify what we chuck out?
I could probably do it on my phone, it might be easier.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, feel free to get them out.
That's in, yeah? That's sound.
Perhaps we could put the lights up for this bit.
I mean,
Right.
you
Maybe
might
there,
want-
Stuart, you're on my
you might want some
phone.
decorating
Fabulous.
about,
Show the display, like,
Captain Britain? Not
No.
chucking Captain Britain out?
the use of structural
how would-
steel in building.
where do you carry this all the time?
Sorry?
Do you carry this
Oh, I
all
know.
the time with you, or is it?
So usually the games are set when we're settling in an
Oh,
area.
that's brilliant, Chris. Yeah, so now I
I
can
usually
see
carry it into the
through
game
your phone.
and then put it down somewhere in there and walk away from it.
Stuart,
If I mute, if I
Oh,
oh
turn
no, leave that on. I'm muting mine because I think it's
Okay.
mine.
It's recording.
Yeah.
And I've got to work out.
I was curious when
There
you
we go.
said.
Perfect.
Right, Stuart, can you see what's on the table?
I can indeed.
If we.
I'll come around the other side.
Yeah.
I think they're buried in there,
We scavenge
mostly
stuff,
in
we
use.
don't want to-
In there, okay,
yes.
but not in this.
But not in that, no, they're folding them up. You could fold up
Oh, this must be really heavy.
Because I
Have you got any
couldn't
in
see
there?
because pockets as well in there. I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, they're not in there, they're somewhere in the bottom of that. It's
Okay,
like
so that's what you
flat.
meant, survival kit. I can't see anything just doing that. I'm just gonna
No.
put them out and then you
Yes.
can decide.
This has to stay.
Whoa, yeah, I can see why you wanted to loan this one.
Right? It's a chunky book, isn't it?
Big book.
Oh, you've got-
Yeah, it seems like.
So you just get something.
So, do we have a
Is
top
that your
file
box or something?
and a discard file? We're discarding this one. Ooh, oh.
Discard pile up this end.
Uh,
Things to be
Oh, I like
and
this
this
box.
end. So what you would want.
Yeah, a card book is not necessarily what you want, is it? Probably the paper version.
Yeah, but I'm
probably
saying that is
printed.
something to work like.
Oh no, this is bad. I have problems with this. I just moved and I had to give away some of my friends.
I would make a space argument that you could probably place your Bible with a Gideon's
I think
Bible
that's it for books.
if you're looking at space and weight savings.
Right.
Do you think Gideon's Bible's a lighter?
Well, the small red ones.
Oh, yeah.
Loading.
That's a fair point.
Well, you do lose the Old Testament with the Gideon.
Is that,
No.
I don't know, I can't remember from school, but isn't one of them just the New Testament and not the Old Testament?
Yeah, your standard Gideon is the New Testament plus, I think, Psalms and one other book from the Old Testament.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, you've got the Psalms separately here, Stuart.
Oh, well, in that case,
Coming
definitely
back
don't
to your
need
point
that.
about having a permanent occasion, if you have a base, you know, if there are sort of big books that you can cache and just take around
Also,
those which you might need, portable.
So he's allowed to keep his notebook, isn't he? I reckon.
I think we probably, yeah, I think we probably exclude the notebook bits.
Belonging to child. all of that.
Sorry, Stuart, I'm wobbling around.
Sorry,
I don't know what you can.
That's all right.
Can you see adequately?
Yes, yeah, I can see pretty well here.
I'm not sure
Well,
whether
that's
we want
nice.
to London map
Okay.
all the time. You know.
Oh, Gibran, Marianne, my wife likes Gibran.
Do you think we should, it's too light, but can we get rid of this if we want 10? Because why should we have London only?
Depends if you're in
hang on.
London.
I've experienced with it. This is just what I've done a few months ago. So there's two considerations. There's usefulness and there's weight. We can split this into two piles, light ones and weight,
yeah.
heavy ones. Because like
I would definitely keep
this
this as our-
this weighs nothing, and someone I don't know might pick it up at some point.
Keep this.
So we
This has
It's-
a note
it was
inside it.
Use of structural
saying
steel in
It would be
building.
very useful for characters with
So
certain
the-
keywords.
How likely are
So
you
I'm
to be
guessing this is
smelting
like
your own
needed
steel?
for
Well,
playing the game.
no, but it might be
And this has, this also has the sticker.
scavenged,
This also has
and
the
we,
sticker.
you know, there might be
So I
some
can give a little bit of
tables.
clarification on the
We can
stickers.
get some
All
rough,
books in the
like,
game used to have
formulas, like,
stickers.
Okay.
We
And
don't
then
want to
They
put too
realised
much,
what I was doing
like if there's
and
a
stopped
table
requiring
about
books to have
how
stickers.
much
Okay,
weight
so
to put
this
on
really
a
means
thing or
nothing.
certain weight. Stuff like this might be really useful, and they're not that heavy. So I vote for keep the engineering ones and only cull them if we're short on
Yeah.
space.
I think we should keep
Yeah,
them because you
so
never know after that when you
we
might
can-
need some,
yeah.
building something extra.
And this is a religious apocalypse, right? That's going
This
on.
particular one is religious.
I reckon keep
Oh,
the
well,
religious
then-
books in case they give us some clues. and things.
Definitely keeping the dictionary of the occult.
Yes, after the story about the prison, that seems like a very sensible one to hang on to.
Right,
Keep-
what about this one?
keep the prints.
Yeah,
You need to know that for
What's the print?
surviving against other Machiavelli's
When you need to be about-
1500s how basically how to survive as a small city-state up against other small city-states.
Yes, you
We have
definitely want that in
large
case you encounter any
England
other
like
groups.
France.
it
It's-
is slightly weighty.
Sharp
I
corners,
think
though,
if
you
you're-
could
if
throw
you're-
that at
If you're a
somebody.
leader looking for
Mm,
information on leading, I
Maybe we
would.
should have a special file for leadership
It's,
because that's
Certain style of leadership.
It is a certain style of leadership, and it's it was
also.
banned by the church. For its,
I'm sorry about this, but always discard the no.
Oh,
We,
yes.
we don't have any
Okay.
room for that. So we have leadership.
No, it was democracy that goes into this
Preparation.
apocalypse.
So
You can
these
dish
ones
the
probably are
democracy
useful, isn't it? All these in one file, because that's like about electricity, that's about, so these are should be in one file, the tunneling
acoustic
should,
hit
the
songs.
tunneling should go in there as well.
Have any instruments made it through into the after times?
My harmonica has.
This?
And someone had a recorder last time.
Oh, okay.
That was great.
So-
They were really good.
Harmonica and a recorder, the apocalypse sounds great.
free.
Sorry, Stuart?
This stage.
I said a harmonica and a recorder, that's a combination that's going to make the apocalypse sound absolutely great.
So I've genuinely, I've looked for harmonica recorder duets, and I found two. One was a classical piece that I don't know, and the other is the theme from Wallace and Gromit.
These are fictions.
Fictions. Acoustic hit song
That
is
could
quite.
get old pretty quickly in a
Oh,
post-apocalyptic scenario.
Tony, from rehearsals, yes,
So
it
you have
can.
a couple of fictions.
Quite heavy. I vote we discard it unless we have extra room.
I agree that,
It-
acoustic songs from the old world, we want to be making new songs.
I mean,
Yeah,
true.
write your
and
own music.
And also-
Because
Okay.
otherwise you'll never get 10. But the
Um,
fictions, one of them.
Okay.
Is there anything special about this Star Trek novelisation?
It's fiction and it's heavy, so
Yeah.
I think it needs
People,
to go.
people have to be able to dream after the apocalypse.
I mean, true. I mean, we can bring stuff back.
Modern very pretty
So-
inclusive, pretty safe stuff. Yeah.
Children's book.
I'm
Oh, it's not by you.
Mm.
No, we get rid of this because it's not actually Star Trek by Doom Modern Very
Mm.
It's very safe.
I mean, they
That's a good
generally with series and series, making books about series, they would delegate the writing
Yeah.
anyway. So it's probably official. It's just right. But until further notice, I
Sounds
think.
like a tiny little London roadmap, if we're going to
Mhm.
London at any point.
I mean, my.
very small.
Yeah, I reckon,
What's that?
I think keep it. It's tiny.
What's that
Might as
big
well.
red book down there?
That's fine.
Did you say?
That one?
Right.
Assertiveness at work.
I think we should keep this.
We can do away with work in a few.
True, but also it's about managing community relationships. I think this needs to stay.
This is poetry, but I don't know if we are getting.
There's no. Was it surgery books, Alex? Was
On loan.
That goes.
I love.
These are all the books that
Oh,
aren't on
right,
loan, all
right.
the surgery books. The surgery book is on permanent loan to the new NHS.
See, I think we
Yes.
probably need to know what the rest of the
These
collection
things
is
on
on
loan
before we can.
These things are not on loan, maybe if we
Well,
call them
there is
leases.
some level of a list in here, should you be able to decipher my cataloguing system.
Maybe you could guide
There you
us.
go.
If we have
From that
questions,
page
then-
onwards, there is a catalogue.
Okay. So you've got a book on assertiveness. Do you have other books on any similar topics? Was that-
Just the two leadership books I talked about.
Okay. So we've got, maybe it's a decision like Nelson Mandela
Yeah,
or
okay.
assertiveness.
So we have 2, 4, 6. We need to get rid of 4 more. So I don't know about poetry. We can exclude it until further notice.
Yeah, I'm happy to exclude it.
Then we
Otherwise
can
we'll
bring
not
it back
have-
in.
Yeah,
This seems to be something about what?
this is diagnosis.
Holistic medicine of some sort.
Oh, so you've got a medicine book then?
I'm not entirely sure it's
You
medicine, but if
Orienting
there are ghosts, then this probably is relevant. So we can keep it for now.
I don't want to get rid of the old
okay.
fiction ones, but
Do you know what? Some of these, like this one, I reckon like, it's about an end of the world scenario, but I think it would be as good for somebody to read it and then sort of just like summarise it and put some notes down or something and then ditch the
Is
book.
dystopian fiction more or less valuable in these circumstances to something like hide and seek or business, which is straight crime fiction?
oh, this is religious. Okay.
Yeah, so we probably hide and seek. It's quite small. That is book about the
I
apocalypse.
don't know. the
Do
good
we-
line, but-
Basically, do we want a book about how someone imagined apocalypse before the apocalypse in an apocalypse?
And it's not the same apocalypse.
Well, exactly. Like it's
maybe
before the
they're-
apocalypse.
Yeah, shall we?
So that's maybe.
The advantage of fictional apocalypses is that somebody got to write the ending.
What in the world is this?
I think we're probably going to throw away all your books, Alex. Unfortunately.
That's a legit response, I think.
I think this is like how to democracy. I think we need this.
Well, I mean, maybe we should have a vote on whether democracy is a good idea or not before we.
I wanted to keep the prints. I'm not to be trusted
What a
with
communist
democracy.
manifesto, what's that?
It is quite heavy, so maybe in the maybe pile.
Yeah, people have been
What about
calling
getting rid of
communism
one
to
of
work
these
for decades.
standards?
Maybe now she must
British
be standard.
standards.
British, which
What is
Those,
British
um,
standards?
those steel and building ones. Well,
They're quite
I queried whether we would need a book on use of steel structures in buildings on the grounds that how much new steel would we be smelting anytime soon?
Well,
But
we can-
Rain pointed out that you might be scavenging steel to or need to know how to use steel in buildings that you're occupying temporarily or whatever. So
Well, if not, I seem to recall British standards burn pretty well.
Because that's one of the.
That's a story I'm not telling right now.
All these extra ones to say how
Well,
much load you have to have and how you calculate. They're probably all out of date now.
They have this argument is it the day after tomorrow, where they're all holed up in New York Public Library and deciding whether to burn, do we burn the Bible or do we burn things? Why can't we just burn all these tax codes? Oh yeah.
2 more to
I
go.
mean, the argument in favor of those is that they're light, they're small, and they have tables, and engineers, people who build stuff, love tables. You just look up your rebar thickness, and then it will tell you how much load it can bear and stuff like that. So
if you were being completely dispassionate, it would be relatively easy because you would say let's keep all the practical ones and let's dump all the fiction and all the things. But
that's where
we're not doing
from.
that necessarily. But there are still fiction books. There are more philosophical books about meaning rather than about doing.
I think we need things that facilitate thinking about meaning, and also just things which are fun. Still need to have fun in the apocalypse. Right?
Well,
We definitely can definitely bring stuff back in. So if you just take out all that's not strictly necessary, and then you prioritize bringing stuff back in.
Yeah, because we're moving it. We're taking it with us right now, aren't we? It doesn't have a location.
So, is this fiction?
I don't want to take out all the rights.
It depends what kind of fiction. Like
There are.
That's tricky, isn't it?
It could be useful.
Yeah, I think it's more useful.
yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose as you
Oh
go,
yeah. I think this is like the general key pile
This
now.
is like a poetry book or something. It's
So that is the recordings of people that had inhaled the ashes of Prometheus and got visions of Prometheus's life. It is irreplaceable.
a unique.
Although, well, it's not entirely irreplaceable because we know Prometheus now. It's complicated.
That's fair.
But yes, no, I would class that book as irreplaceable personally. But your mileage may vary. It's certainly one of a kind.
I suppose,
Okay.
as you probably found out, Alex, as you go up the hierarchy of needs, you move from a small amount of books required to an infinite amount of books required. Like Danny said, you want some fun, but then what's fun for one person is not fun for the other. We've already talked about the Hungry Caterpillar in favour of erotic fiction. That's controversial, isn't it? Depends.
This isn't the Bible. This is a book of hymns and psalms.
yeah, but this is religious, and I thought we were.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes, practical.
who knows which one, which hymn will banish a certain demon?
Yeah.
So
I mean, that was good enough for most
We
Christians.
got 10
in history who
already,
didn't
but we
have
can
their own
revisit
Bible.
if we want not to take any.
I think we have 2
Just
minutes
a book of
before we go
Psalms
to
and
the
a couple of Gospels,
Yep.
you know?
and then we can
That's
hold a
rhythm,
vote on which ones we want back in.
So you've
So
got 2 minutes to hold that vote.
right, all right.
Do we have how many brains do we have? We've got more than 10.
We have 10, 11, so we can just decide whether we want any of them.
And I suppose this would have gone in this file.
Just the comic books as a form of book. We'll chuck them all out now.
Oh,
Assuming none are on loan,
Yeah,
so
but
it
they
might
are-
be nice as a,
They're very nice, you can have one of them back.
yeah.
yeah. I don't know which ones.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Because you've got more than 10.
So let's
7, 8,
see.
9, 10,
I'm thinking more if people want to make their own comic books in the future.
Staying of Titan Fantasy books fame.
One of
I
them.
believe so.
Oh, let's have that one then.
Yeah, that is Captain Britain, which is really cool, but it's not very good.
So now, anyone coming back from there?
Yeah, that's
The very hungry I would vote for the very hungry caterpillar. Sorry, because we haven't got a lot of.
It's made of cardboard.
It is a bit weighty.
But that's for more for children, isn't it?
It's for
1
children.
minute,
There are
zombies are
chil-
coming.
there are
Yeah.
children in the.
Well, we might rescue a child somewhere. So.
Yeah.
Shall we
That's
take
a good
the
point.
comic book as well?
We've already got
1, 2,
one
3,
coming.
4,
As
We
an
need to have
example.
10 out.
Well,
10. That's 10.
Yeah, okay, we can take that.
Actually, that's 11.
No, it's not 11.
That's 11.
Right, you can save one more book. Which one?
sci-fi?
Okay, yeah. let's
Which
do
one?
that.
Which one did you point to?
Index.
Lovely.
There we go. Sure.
Right.
Oh, dear.
Children?
Okay, and the zombies arrive and you run. Please reclaim your seats. Thank you very
Right,
much.
switching off. Switching
So,
off cam.
fascinating.
So are you going to get rid of these for now?
I mean, genuinely, I might cull some of those. I was not kidding. This is not just an exercise. This is me reading the collection and drawing on the experiences from librarians. Thank you. So yes, thank you for that. Some of this, I definitely agree with some of it. This has been read by 2 members of the community. They've reported me that it is the most boring book that they have ever read. It is on my pull list already.
Would you want to read about a different apocalypse when you're already dealing with the one you've got?
Grass is always green.
Escapism.
Yes.
You
Yes, you would.
isn't it? Because
But I would suggest that Station 11 is a much better book. Everyone should read Station 11. It's fantastic. It's about an orchestra surviving in the apocalypse. It's amazing. I'm a bit sad about the acoustic songbook because when I brought that, one person's eyes absolutely lit up.
I mean, if they were here, they could have
Well, exactly.
proposed to
Exactly.
bring it back
Exactly.
in. So.
You're not in the community, so this is a kind of a difficult exercise. But for your purposes right now, fine. Like there are no wrong choices here, and I think I would make fairly similar ones in a press time situation without that knowledge. Which is a shame because you do end up cutting a lot of fiction. I think that's a shame, but it's a survival situation and you've got to prioritise people's lives, and I think that's reasonable.
Also, if people want to carry the books they want, they can do
A
so.
point I have made myself a number of times, and that is why we no longer have a copy of 50 Shades of Grey in Swedish. Right, I'll take any more questions now. We've got 4 minutes and maybe longer if nobody comes in. Just to say, the photographs are by the excellent Oliver Facey and Charlie Moss. Both the web pages, Oliver in particular has a ton of LARP photographs, including photographs from most of the Forsaken games. Go check them out, they're amazing. And you will find many silly photos of me in various other games. That's all I have to say on that. Questions?
Yeah, Steve brought up a really interesting point actually during that discussion. Have you considered the prospect of sort of getting people to create edited versions of some of these books? So taking like a large book and editing out the information that's useful, writing that in a notebook or something, or tearing out irrelevant pages to improve weight.
That is a fascinating idea. I really like it. Cutting out pages is one of those things that it's such a sacrosanct thing that I'd never considered it. But actually, there's loads of these books that have superfluous material in them that we could get rid of. And as I say, we're not the Bodleian. It's not our job to preserve these texts. It's our job to make a useful collection for our community. I'm very interested in that, and I'll think about it.
Thinking longer term as well, I mean, thinking in Day of the Triffids style, in terms of length of time covered, you get past how to preserve the knowledge that you've got and into how do you create new knowledge. I mean, books do preserve, but eventually, especially the more well-handled ones, will dissolve or disintegrate. How do you,
like in the time
conserve knowledge? Yeah, well, that eventually you get into the time machine, and it's suddenly sort of 40,000 years in the future, and everything crumbles to dust in your hands. But yes, producing new books or producing new forms of captured knowledge would be part of a librarian,
a long-term
librarian
planning for the library. Yeah.
I throw in Fahrenheit 451,
Mhm.
where they learned books by rote. That is,
Sorry about that.
they learned books by rote, but that is, not very practical and probably not very achievable when you're, trying to survive the next day. But committing to memory certain things, taking inspiration from the Vikings, who had oral fiction for most of it. They started writing it down post Christianization, I think. So that is also kind of, especially for fiction, a medium probably not as set in stone as actually having a collection of books, but having a collection of knowledge definitely important.
Transmission, that's
Mental
quite a lot of traditions, isn't it?
The other thing that occurs to me is, say you're librarian of the future, scavenging from the wreck of the Arts and Social Sciences Library of the future. You wouldn't just be having to deal with one of each. You would, in the wreck of a library, find multiple copies, and therefore you could set up multiple drop bags that you could take around and leave around, so you wouldn't be forced to necessarily own and rely on having access to one.
No, that's a good point. The other thing is that, like, some books are much easier to come by than others. Like, I tend not to carry that many bestsellers because, by definition, there are hundreds of copies around in homes that you might scavenge, and that's why most of my fiction is stuff you haven't heard of. Because
People will be wheeling trolleys of Fisher Hazelgrade Swedish around to use as currency.
it could be the case. I could probably set that up if I tried. Okay.
Thank you, that was excellent.
Yeah.
And really
Thank you.
entertaining and really informative.
No, thank you for engaging with it, because it's kind of a silly thing, but I think it's actually.
Oh no, it
Well, it makes you think about
Yeah.
familiar things in a sideways way, which is good.
I think we could stay here and debate for another hour or so.
Very easily so.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Talk should be longer.
Maybe Christopher, maybe we'll do a similar thing with data sets. I can't imagine how
How are we
preserve-
preserving data sets
Let's say-
past the
Well, you
apocalypse?
know something, have you seen that? Is it Rogue or something? The thing where the guy's got a MP3 player, and
I'm
it's kind of
too
the
much
last
of a
MP3
hobbit.
player. So he's got an opportunity to preserve
comfort,
digital audio past
I
the
like
apocalypse,
to
I'm
but
not.
only on one
So-
device.
so one person-
I'm not learning
With my tea
1500
and my laptop.
one in a million videos like the Mabinogi on.
Oh yeah,
Relates them at need.
Exactly, yeah.
Once I put out a thing on Facebook saying, okay, I'm doing this. What books do you think I should include in the library? And someone who is a bit of a survivalist said that I should say, what you should do is you should get a Kindle or some other e-reader and just play tons and tons of books into that one thing.
Yeah.
And then it's very light, but you have a ton of information.
I have issues with that.
Mhm.
How do you charge it?
Yeah, where do you charge?
So
it?
that's doable because he had an answer for that, and that was you have a solar charger.
If you back it up.
Yeah, cool, wonderful. What if your solar charger breaks? What if one of the that any digital medium is not sustainable without infrastructure, and there will be no infrastructure if de facto apocalypse.
Yes, absolutely. And also, like, that is a great thing to suggest now and do now. It's a terrible thing to suggest to someone who is several events
the
into his
apocalypse just happened.
Yeah. Microfiche would be your new best friend, wouldn't it? Because if only we'd have thought that before the apocalypse.
Microfiche and what, like a magnifying glass?
Yeah, or a Viewmaster.
Yes, yes, bring back the Viewmasters and central information. That's all.
Some sort of miniaturization technology that's non-digital anyway.